G'day, this is Damo from the Charter Connection of Fishing Charters and the Charter Vessel Diversity out of Gulf Harbour Marina. It's the 19th of June and the last three trips we've been down the bottom end of Waiheke Island, around the Hooks Bay, Gannet Rock, through to Spray Rock Coast, just sort of working all that sort of area. Out around the Gannet and out on some of the deeper holes just off to the side there. There's a bit of current there, and that's one of the reasons we were going there. Also, it gives us good shelter from that southerly and the southeasterly. And like the old rule says, wind from the south, fish shut their mouth. So when you've got that happening, the southerly, and you've got the temperature being cold, and you've also got the time of year where basically a lot of the fish have moved on out, you're really up against it. So one of the key things that we do is A, is we find a bit of current, B, we anchor and burley up. We're not bothering chasing the workups right now. They seem to be short-lived, not that productive unless you're right on them. And if it's a calm day, you'll have every man and his dog buzzing around all over them anyway, which just puts them down and it's all over real quick. So basically a waste of time, effort and fuel. We've been getting about 30 fish a trip, a few dories, trevallies, carwais as well. So it's not a total dead loss, but it is, well, how would you say it? It is hard fishing, and it is a little quiet right now. So one of the things that we do when it gets like this, and it looks like we're switching to that mode now, is we start fishing along through the top of Coromandel, up the inside of Great Barrier, probably more in close than anywhere else, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And Little Barrier, Horn Rock, Jimmy's Fowl, the northeastern Rodney coastline, and even Takatu, but in close again. When I'm talking about in close, we'll anchor the boat with the wind and the tide together. Quite often in some of these areas I've just spoken about, especially through the Colville Channel, you don't necessarily have to have the wind and the tide going the same direction. It is preferable, mostly for comfort and mostly for burley distribution, but if you've got a lot of tide, especially in a deep draft boat like the Diversity that draws sort of 1.6 through to 2 meters depending on load, there's a lot of boat in the water, so the tide will actually overtake the wind as long as it's strong enough, and you can still burley up with the breeze blowing in your face. In a small boat you'll typically spin around or lie side on and you'll roll around in the chop, and it's quite uncomfortable, not that productive, hard to get your burley going in the right direction and quite hard to fish. I would say you go drift in that situation, that's fine, you drift wind against tide, but we're talking about anchoring and burley, and we're also talking about anchoring in close. Now in close for us is sort of 4 to 12, 18 metres depending on the type of structure and the type of area that we're fishing. And we'll burley both the top and the bottom. So by the bottom I mean we'll put the wobble pot down. We have one of the large wobble pots, that's the big truck spring type wobble pot with the mesh around it, and so we'll chuck that down at the front of the boat. Also in the sink at the back of the boat we'll throw a burley bomb in there, and we'll just chuck a brush or something in the sinkhole just so that there aren't big chunks floating out, and we'll fire a bit of water in there and we'll just scrape the burley pot with a knife so we get this nice slick going out behind the boat, real nice slick, lots of little bits filtering down, although typically these are high current areas so it's not that effective like for fishing right at your feet, or fishing unless there's a structure quite close, say at Square Top Island or Channel Island, or if you're fishing hard against the structure at Flat Rock, Horn Rock, or some of those other places. Places like Lee Reef where it's sort of 8 or 9 metres deep, that can be alright too, but again if the current's too strong, that form of burley, it's going straight over the top of the fish and probably won't bring much to you other than carwai. So, but we'll do that, fish that hard up against some structure. We'll also got that burley pot at the front of the boat that's on the bottom or up off the bottom, say about 1 metre. That's pouring out a burley, so we're trying to absolutely saturate the water column with little bits. We're not trying to feed them, although we do chuck a couple of chunks in to get them chewing something. But I find over burleying, they'll hang back and there's no need for them to come any further forward to your baits, unless there's a lot of fish there. So typically there's not a lot of fish during the winter. They are typically bigger fish, especially when you're fishing in close. You might wait sort of 4 or 5 hours to get onto a few good fish rather than the summer where you could knock them over quite quickly and smaller fish. you do have to put up with a few pickers here and there, and the other thing you have to put up with, of course, is some bycatch. Cooter being not the sort of bycatch you want to catch, and things like trevally, John Dory, and carwise are things that aren't so bad. So that's what we do. Some of the go-to areas for us, like I've talked about, is Coromandel, and you've heard me mention Square Top Island. Well, I'll actually go right around the top of Square Top and come down towards Stony Bay and Poley Bay, and I'll fish hard and close against those areas there. That area there doesn't get fished a lot and close. That's one of the reasons I like it. Cape Barrier also, I'll get right and close there. Burley up a real storm in there. There's some nice little bays that have current flying past, and I tend to find that about 18, 19 metres in those areas there's still a lot of kelp in the current, and those are the areas, of course, that your big snapper like to sort of mooch around in and habitate. Other areas that are sort of out in the open, a little harder to burley, like Horn Rock, you might have to put up with a few barracuda there. Same as Jimmy's Fowl. Jimmy's Fowl is a huge area, and it's easy to see. It's on the chart there, just off the side of Horn Rock. It's such a big area that if the cooter get you, then you're pretty much screwed. You're going to be chewed off all day there. So it's one of those areas I tend to get there first thing in the morning, and just as the sun's coming up normally, when it's still dark on the bottom, and get that change of shift, if you like. So the night shift being replaced by the day shift, and that's typically when a big predator will hunt the reef. So that's when your big snapper will come out. He'll be hunting down the blemmies and stuff like that have been scurrying around on the reef during the night, and they'll be wanting to hide for the day to save against predation, and that's when they'll get caught out. So that's another good time to hunt your big snapper there. Little barrier, if you're in close there, we can be in 4 metres there along some of those boulder banks. I don't have any fear at all. I've fished the bottom, fished little barrier there and seen the bottom, but there's been really good current holding us in the right place. There's been awesome burley flowing out, and those are sort of the key things that you need to do. Again, if you're fishing along some of those boulders, the bottom's quite undulated. There's a lot of ground there. There's quite a bit of weed. The rocks are covered in slime and algae and stuff like that. So the snapper and stuff can graze along through there, and also they can hunt down bait fish that will hide in those little nooks and crannies, along with crays and crabs and snails and whelks and periwinkles and all that jazz. So that's little barrier. Then, like I say, the northeastern coast. Sort of Lee Reef north up to Cape Rodney, and then just on the corner there's quite a bit of current goes through there, so you want to time your time it there. So if you've got, say, some southwest with outgoing tide, obviously some northerly or northwest with incoming tide. Northeast can get a bit grubby there, so just be careful with that. Coming back further down the coast, you've got Takatu. There's quite a bit of fowl along the inside of Takatu, and all through there, all the way down really to towards Sandspit, although it is quite silted up now with development and stuff like that, and it's not like it was 20 years ago. Obviously the main structure in that particular area is Maori Rock, and that gets a fair hiding. On the other side, on the Carwell side, you've got Fairchild Reef and the coast of Carwell there. Bigger tides for that area, and also Flat Rock. I prefer a bigger tide there, although there is quite good current flow on the smaller tides. A bit close to home for us is the Wellington Reef area. You do need a big tide to fish that successfully, and also the Tirri Channel. You want to keep that tide in mind, make sure the direction's going with the breeze, otherwise you get a bit dirty through there in a small boat, not so bad in a bigger boat, and get right and close. There's a lot of structure there, and one of the things that was pointed out to me was if you can find an area where there's like almost a backheady or something like that, a lot of bait fish will hang that area too, so you want to sort of concentrate your efforts in those areas. And one of those places is where the Tirri Channel fires out past the end of Huaroa Point, or Whangaproa Point. It's got the pillbox with a light on it. It fires out through there. There's a little eddy just in that backwater there, and in the middle of winter I popped in there one day with a booze cruise. It was actually a fishing trip, but they got a bit hammered, so we decided to feed them up some sausages and sort their heads out. We went in there and we anchored up in about 10 metres of water in this calm little bay. The boat was sort of swinging around on the pick like this. We cast a few pillies out the back, and there was a few splashes, and within about an hour we had 20 pretty reasonable fish sort of on the deck. I've done it again properly. with fish shows, and that area there can be quite productive. Also, that Wellington Rock area, I do prefer the northern side of that, and I fished there a lot at a small boat when I was a lot younger, when I was 18, like yesterday. And some of the foul through there is pretty good. 18 metres on the northern side of the rocks, probably my pick of it for there. Then you come back down towards Auckland, and your options really start running out a little bit, unless you're getting in close to Rangi Motatapu, that coastline, the northern coastline, sort of between the causeway and the Rangi Light, so along that edge there, and then from the causeway through to Billy Goat Point, I think it is. Fishing in there can be quite good too. There's a lot of ground in there, and there's a lot of weed, and I like it when there's a bit of swell, or after there's been a bit of swell, so a lot of feeds exposed, and those are pretty much key areas. Other than that, you've got your bottom end of Waiheke, and again, like I said, we've been fishing in pretty close most of the time through there. Although the last weekend we were out in about 30 metres, and that's where we found the bulk of the fish. So keeping all that in mind, what I'm trying to say is, when it's cold and southerly, and you're not doing very well, aim for some current, get amongst the current. Don't be afraid to get in close, spend some time burleying up, get your boat sitting with the wind, wind and tide together, burley up, top and bottom, spend some time and effort on burley, get some chunks out there, don't overfeed them, and don't be afraid to put out a live bait, either straight lined or under a balloon. You'll be surprised what eats it. So that's it from me. Looks like this week's pretty good so far as weather. We're looking like we're going to get out just later in the week, and then the weekend again, so we'll probably be up around the top of Coromandel, Little Barrier this time round. So yeah, that's my tips this week. Burley up, get amongst it. Stamo, Charter Connection Fishing Charters, and the Charter Vessel Diversity. You can still hook up with us for $99 for a day's fishing. Too easy. www.charterconnection.co.nz.